Welcome to Shad's Guitar Show. Whether it's the gear or the players who made the gear famous, this podcast is about all things guitar. Well, hey there, and welcome to Shad's Guitar Show. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode. And today I wanted to kind of do just an off-the-cuff conversation about something that came to light yesterday at the shop that I work at, which I think I've mentioned a few times, Wildcat Guitars in Escondido. We're kind of a high-end boutique guitar shop. And it's always interesting to have conversations with customers, but something came up yesterday that I really started me thinking, and I've had this conversation with other people a few times, but maybe I just sort of thought, well, this could be something good for the show, and I think it could be valuable to discuss and maybe helpful as well. So I want to get into the pros and cons of YouTube demos. All right, so if you're like me, anytime you're looking for information on a new thing that you're interested in, whether it's a guitar, an amplifier, an effects pedal, a microphone, anything at all, strings even. I mean, I don't know, anything guitar related. Usually the first stop is going to be YouTube, right? Because you can hear it, you can see it, you can get somebody's opinion about the guitar that you trust. Hopefully it's somebody that you're subscribed to and following, and you kind of appreciate their take on things, and you can get some good information quickly. And there's a lot of value in that. But the flip side is that there are some variables that may create some confusion, right? When we're talking about trying to figure out if a certain, guitar related component is right for us. So I think the list of pros is pretty obvious. You can actually see it, you can actually hear it, you can actually get someone's feedback. And there's generally, if it's a product that, is fairly well known, there's probably hundreds of different, demo videos of that particular, whatever it is, those pickups or that guitar or that amp, which is great and could be on the pros list for sure. But I think that could also be on the cons list. And what I mean by that is sometimes you can get ear fatigue, and you can get, you're listening to all these different demos, and, one person playing it sounds really good, and then another one, you're like, I don't know, that kind of doesn't sound the same. I'm not sure now. And it can actually create more confusion by listening to a whole bunch of people than just listening to maybe one or two people that you really respect. And kind of hearing it in that context, because ultimately hearing it, on a bunch of different videos, it can be tough to figure out which one of those most accurately represents the piece of gear you're looking at, right? Because everybody's using a different amp, probably. Everybody's using different gauge strings on their guitar, maybe. Everybody's using different microphones. Everybody's using a different interface. Everybody's using different, post-production stuff. So at the end of the day, which one of those is actually the most authentic version of what the piece of gear that you're looking at actually sounds like? And that's not even taking into account the player. I mean, if you and I sat down next to each other and both played the same guitar into the same amp in a room, we're both going to sound different, even if we play the exact same thing, because your hands are not my hands and vice versa. So there's that aspect of it too that you have to factor in. So I feel like if you're trying to use YouTube as a resource to get a basic idea of what something sounds like, that's great. But if you're trying to figure out exactly what something is going to sound like when you're using it, and you're kind of pinning your hopes on, okay, that's exactly how it's going to sound when I use it, that's kind of maybe setting yourself up for potential disappointment. But going back to my conversation with my friend Eric yesterday, it was really about he's looking for the like perfect set of PAF replica pickups to put in his guitar, in his Les Paul. And, you know, a lot of people have been there, and there are certainly no lack of great winders who are making amazing pickups, right? But that right there creates, you know, this kind of like, what do I do mentality, because you've got realistically 15 or 20 different choices of pickups. You've got, you know, 20 guys out there that are making great pickups, and then they have variations. Like he was looking at throwback pickups, which John Gundry is amazing. His pickups are great, but he has variations of his PAFs. Now he makes authentic sounding pickups, but which one of his pickups? So even if you narrowed it down to, I want a set of throwbacks, well, he makes 8 or 10, you know, different variations of his PAF style pickups. So which one of those do you want? So it can become really confusing to figure out. Now, when you take it a step further and start listening to clips of these pickups on YouTube, that gets even more confusing, because you could listen to 5 different demos of the same pickup and they all sound slightly different because of the things we talked about before. They're all using slightly different recording techniques. They're all using maybe different amps. They all have a different, you know, their hands are different. There's all these variables. So if you're trying to listen to something and assuming that, okay, that's exactly what it's going to sound like with my setup, you know, again, it's just potential disappointment. But let me definitely reiterate what I said earlier, that YouTube is a tremendous resource. I mean, I put a lot of videos on there. If you're not subscribed to Shad's Guitar Show on YouTube, you definitely should. And I'd appreciate it if you did that. And, you know, I love getting people's opinions on different things. But I think we just need to approach it from the standpoint of, okay, I'm going to get a basic idea of this thing I'm interested in, but I'm not going to assume that it's going to be exactly like that when I use it. So I guess kind of just to sum up this episode, I would say when you're approaching looking at gear on YouTube, maybe if it's something that you're really trying to get a good feel for, sort of maybe look to find examples from, you know, just a couple of really well, you know, people you trust on YouTube that you follow, that you really like, that you've had good experiences in the past, versus listening to 35 different people, you know, demo the same product, because then it's going to get super confusing. Stick to, you know, hey, I like these 2 or 3 guys and they've all done a demo of this, so I'm going to listen to those. And I feel like between the 3 of those, I'll get a pretty good idea of what I can expect if I buy one. Basically, just treat YouTube as a resource for finding out about how things sound or perform, but not necessarily treat it as the gospel truth. All right, so if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to share it with some friends. And if you know some people out there who've fallen victim to the rabbit trail of YouTube, maybe send this their way, so that they can hear it, and maybe it will bring a little clarity and like, yeah, you know what, maybe that's been me in the past. Maybe I should temper my expectations when I'm on YouTube. And if you're not following me on YouTube, again, subscribe at Shad's Guitar Show. Also, if you're on Instagram, Shad's Guitar Show on Instagram, give me a follow. I would love to have you as a follower there and be able to interact with you there and on all social media platforms. So, and until next time, remember that the best guitar player is the one having the most fun.